Good morning. Alrighty, well, we have an interesting news article that I would like to talk about. So NBC News had posted an article this morning, and Morning Joe and Mika and his crew were talking about it this morning. Now, I don't watch them. I don't really watch a whole lot of mainstream stuff, but I happened to come across this article on Twitter, and I thought, oh, this is incredibly interesting. This is really interesting. So if you want to find this article and research it for yourself, I'll just give you the headline. You can search for it. Focus on Flynn and Trump timeline suggests obstruction is on Mueller's mind. That's the title. And this is interesting. The title is interesting to me because they are suggesting, NBC News is suggesting that Mueller's investigation is moving in the direction of obstruction of justice. And that's actually what Andrew McCarthy has theorized in looking at what is going on with the way that Flynn's plea deal came out. It looks like they would, if Mueller's investigation continues to look into potentially prosecuting Trump, it's going in the direction of obstruction of justice. This is a fairly significant article. I don't want to make light of it. Okay, I'm just going to read through this article and give you some observations, and we're going to talk a little bit about some things that we've already discussed on my previous messages. So I'm just going to read it like the first paragraph. Special counsel Robert Mueller is trying to piece together what happened inside the White House over a critical 18-day period that began when senior officials were told that National Security Advisor Mike Flynn was susceptible to blackmail by Russia, according to multiple people familiar with the matter. So, NBC's story is based on anonymous sources who are leaking information about Robert Mueller's investigation, which is not supposed to be privy to anyone. It's supposed to be a closed-up, airtight environment, and there are people leaking information about Mueller's investigation to NBC. Have we seen this before? All right, just put this in the back of your mind. Have we seen any recent stories where somebody leaked information who was on Mueller's team about the investigation? And what happened to them? So here's some things for you to think about. Critical thinking and analysis of news. I'm going to give you some things to just tuck away. When you're reading news stories, you're reading reports. Okay, we know that Peter Strzok was a high member on Mueller's investigation team. And although the official story is that Strzok and his girlfriend, Paige, were removed from Mueller's team because they were texting back and forth anti-Trump stuff. In fact, what happened was Strzok leaked information about the raid on Manafort's house to the Washington Post. There was classified information that was leaked to the Washington Post, and Strzok was the one who did it. And Strzok was removed from Mueller's team in August. So here's the thing. The first thing to think about is people who have leaked on Mueller's team information about what they're doing have been entered in the disciplinary process. Okay? And this is something that the mainstream media is completely oblivious to. They don't care. They never report on the consequences of what happens to these leakers, these anonymous sources who are leaking stuff to the press. They never report on what happens to these people. All they care about is getting their juicy details. And, ooh, we're going to get Trump. Ooh, we got another thing, we're going to get Trump. And they don't realize that these leakers are in big trouble. They're missing the bigger picture. So when you look at news articles, one thing to consider, obviously, is political bias. What is the political bias of the reporter? What is the political bias of the, is it NBC, ABC, Fox? What is their political bias? How far left, how far right are they? Do they tend to hype things up? Do they tend to go down conspiracy roads a lot? Do they go down rabbit trails a lot? Something else to consider. How reliable is their information? How reliable is their past reporting on that subject? So when I'm looking at news sources, when somebody's reporting on a subject, I want to know what their track record is on that subject. When I look at reports on Uranium One and what's going on with Uranium One, I look at people like Sarah Carter and John Solomon. Sarah Carter and John Solomon have a really good track record for reporting on Uranium One. Why is that? They're being fed information from the Trump administration. Trump's people in his intelligence community are feeding the information about Uranium One to Sarah Carter and John Solomon. They have an unfair advantage over everyone else. So their reporting on that subject is always good. Thomas Paine with True Pundit has really good sources inside the FBI. I don't read a whole lot of articles from Thomas Paine and True Pundit unless they have to do with the FBI. When it comes to the FBI, I don't think there's anyone who has better reporting than Thomas Paine. He has good sources. Okay. When it comes to taxes and what's going on with tax reform, there's two people I rely on for my information. Ann Vandersteel and our buddy James, Real Person Politics. Those two people have really good information on taxes and business and how the government is dealing with taxes. So when I am reading a story, one of the things I'm asking myself is this person a reliable source on the subject? When I want to know the ins and outs and the details of FISA warrants and the Department of Justice and how things work in the DOJ, I go read Andrew McCarthy. McCarthy was a prosecuting attorney for the DOJ. He has probably better information on that stuff than anybody out there. So one thing, just to help you be a good consumer of news and information, is to try to find reliable sources. Don't always go to the same source and believe and rely on stories from one source, because depending on what the subject is, that source may or may not be a reliable source of information, right? So I have a lot of different sources. Now, one of the things that I've noticed about NBC, ABC, CBS, and a lot of the mainstream liberal media is they have really missed the boat, and they've done some bad reporting on this Mueller investigation. They have these juicy, salacious headlines that seem like they're going to bear fruit, and then inevitably, at some point, they're either proven wrong, the sources are proven wrong, or the story gets retracted, or when you're looking for good information, find good sources. All right. So the other thing is anonymous sources, right? The problem with ABC, CBS, NBC, and a lot of these mainstream media outlets is they have these anonymous sources, right? It's people familiar with the matter, people familiar with the investigation, anonymous sources. That's one of the big problems with the mainstream media, is they're relying heavily on unnamed sources. And when you're an unnamed source, you are not held accountable. If your information is wrong, there is no accountability. And we're finding that out now. All these news agencies that reported on this email about Don Jr. and his supposed, that WikiLeaks sent him an email giving him inside information 10 days before everyone else got it, turned out to be wrong, even though 3 news sources reported it, and all 3 of them had unnamed sources. They all misread, or they read the date correctly but had bad information. The media outlets are refusing to say who their source was. So the sources are never held accountable by the media. Now, if it's an inside source in the intelligence community, and if that inside source was given tainted, poisoned incorrect information with the intent of exposing them as a leaker, then they have some problems. And I think that's what's going on. I think the mainstream media has yet to figure out that they're being played. The media is being played, and so are their sources. The sources are being given bad information by the intelligence community. So knowing that they're going to take it to the press and it's going to be proven wrong, and then the news outlet and the source are both exposed. Sessions has warned them about the leaks. That is true. Sessions has set up a task force specifically designed to take care of and prosecute and identify leakers. And I don't quite understand why these people think that they can leak and not face prosecution and not face consequences. They are going to face consequences. You can already see, just the people on Mueller's team are facing consequences for leaking. So I'm going to go on to paragraph 2. The questions, now this is talking about Mueller's team of investigators and what they've been asking about. The questions about what happened with respect to Flynn between January 26th and Flynn's firing on February 13th, that 18-day window, appear to relate to possible obstruction of justice that by President Donald Trump, say, 2 people familiar with Mueller's investigation into Russian election meddling and potential collusion with the Trump campaign. So 2 people familiar with Mueller's investigation are saying that the line of questioning that Mueller's investigators are moving toward strongly suggests that they're moving toward obstruction of justice, that they're trying to prove or find out whether Trump obstructed justice. And we're going to find out here that it has to do with firing Comey and why didn't they fire Flynn? That's their 2 main questions. Why didn't they fire Flynn? Why didn't Trump fire Flynn? And why did Trump fire Comey? They're hoping and praying that Trump is going to be charged with obstruction of justice because he fired Comey or because he didn't fire Flynn. That's what they're hoping for. Now I'm going to walk you through this real quick. So, did I say real quick? I didn't mean real quick. Multiple sources say during the interviews that Mueller's investigators have asked witnesses, including White House counsel Don McGahn and others who have worked in the West Wing, to go through each day that Flynn remained as National Security Advisor and describe in detail what they knew was happening inside the White House as it relates to Flynn. And the investigator is asking you to recall every day. You came into work on Monday. Flynn was there. What happened? What happened? What did you see? What did you hear? Where did you go? So you have to recall to the best of your ability all of these events. NBC News is trying to get its readers to understand that they're grilling all of these people from the Trump administration. And they're trying to find out every day what happened. It's all meticulous. We got to know all the details. Some of those interviewed by Mueller's team believe the goal is in part to determine if there was a deliberate effort by President Trump or top officials in the West Wing to cover up the information about Flynn that Sally Yates, who is then acting Attorney General, conveyed to McGahn on January 26th. In addition, hey, we got more. In addition to Flynn, McGahn is also expected to be critical in federal investigators' attempts to piece together a timeline for those 18 days. All right. So there's a lot of heavy breathing in this article, and there's a lot of intrigue, and they're hoping to come up with this, and they're hoping to piece together this timeline. They got to find out what happened. Okay, the next section of this article is, when did Trump learn that Flynn lied to the FBI? What did Trump know, and when did he know it? And the obstruction of justice question could hinge on when Trump knew about the content of Flynn's conversations with Russian Ambassador Kislyak, which were the crux of Yates's warning, and blah, 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 blah. And it goes on. All right. So what they're saying is, if Trump did obstruct justice, it would hinge on when he knew the contents of Flynn's conversation with Kislyak? And did Trump try to cover up the lie that when Flynn lied to the FBI? It was actually interesting because 2 days after Flynn had his, I think a day or two after Flynn officially took office as National Security Advisor, the next day or the day after was when he was questioned by the FBI. Now, here is where it gets interesting. Okay, so this is where the road forks and it diverts, and we're going in two different directions. One fork on this road is going to go in the direction of, oh my gosh, Trump covered this up. Oh, maybe he lied about maybe he knew Flynn lied and didn't tell anybody and was covering it up. Oh, maybe he fired Comey because he was covering up all this stuff, right? That's one road. The other road is, okay, we have a problem with this entire scenario because when Sally Yates went screaming to Don McGahn, who's a White House counsel, and said Flynn can be blackmailed because he lied to the FBI and he lied to Pence, and she is taking Flynn's statements. Flynn lied to Pence. Flynn lied to the FBI. Flynn's a liar. Flynn can be blackmailed by the Russians. Flynn is a liability. Trump needs to fire him. We can't have Flynn as National Security Advisor. He needs to be fired. He could be blackmailed by the Russians because he lied. Okay? The entire plot from the very beginning was to get rid of Flynn. That's what the deep state and Obama administration, they wanted to get rid of Flynn. They didn't like him. They didn't trust him. They knew that he could out all of them. So the plan was to get rid of Flynn. And how are they going to do that? The FBI and the DOJ get a hold of their friends over at Fusion GPS. And they had this dossier, this file with information about Trump having Russian hookers peeing on him on a bed that Barack Obama slept in. And, there was this Russian bank that was pinging Trump Tower, and there was communication between Russia. So they go to FISA court with a bunch of information that suggests that Trump and his whole team are a bunch of Russian spies. And they get a warrant to surveil the Trump team and the Russian ambassador. And they are surveilling Flynn. And when Flynn makes a call to Kislyak, they get his information, they take the data. His name is illegally unmasked, and the data is given to Sally Yates, and it's given to everyone else. And that's how Sally Yates knows what Flynn said to who and when. Because it was all being scooped up, and it was being given to people in the Obama administration. Now, here's the problem with that. There is a doctrine, and it's called the fruit of the poisonous tree. And I'm going to read it to you. The fruit of the poisonous tree is a doctrine, a legal doctrine that is an offspring of the exclusionary rule. The exclusionary rule mandates that evidence that is obtained from an illegal arrest, unreasonable search, or coercive interrogation must be excluded from any trial. Under the fruit of the poisonous tree doctrine, evidence is also excluded from the trial if it was gained through evidence uncovered in an illegal arrest, unreasonable search, or coercive interrogation. Like the exclusionary rule, the rule of the fruit of the poisonous tree doctrine was established primarily to deter law enforcement from violating rights against unreasonable search and seizure. What does that mean? That means if the FBI and the DOJ used that Steele dossier to get the search warrant, the FISA warrant to surveil Trump's team, all of the communications and every bit of evidence that goes downstream from that cannot be used in a trial. It's all illegal. It can't be presented in a trial. And this is the thing that the mainstream media is completely missing. It's like, look, you can't do illegal surveillance on somebody and then think that the evidence you get from that surveillance is going to be admissible in court. Because any good defense attorney is going to say, look, you got this information illegally. The judge is going to say, throw it all out. You can't use any of that evidence. And this is what they're all missing. I'm like, look, none of this information is admissible in court. It doesn't mean it didn't happen. It means it's not admissible if you're trying to prosecute somebody. So that is one huge problem that the mainstream media just seems to not want to talk about. So getting back to this. So there's all this, like I said, there's all this heavy breathing and all this, innuendo about what Mueller's team is going to charge Trump with. But the mainstream media is completely oblivious to the fact that when they used that FISA surveillance request, if it was based on that Steele dossier, which is false and which was probably paid for by the FBI, and the whole process, the entire process and all the information can't be used. The other thing is, they're forgetting about the unmasking. So we know that there were many people whose names are unmasked, American citizens. And that information was shared illegally by people in the Obama administration and his intelligence community. And it was shared with New York Times, Washington Post, CNN. All that information that was gotten through illegal unmasking and illegally shared to news outlets, those people can all be prosecuted. Do you hear NBC, ABC, or even Fox talking about the fact that these people are all at risk for prosecution because they did things that are illegal? This is what astounds me when I read these news articles. It's like, you guys are like, there's a huge forest in front of you. You can't see the trees. You can't see the forest because there's this one thing that you're looking at right in front of you, and you're like, wow, look at that thing in front of me. Like, hey, look at the forest. There's a big forest back there. No, look at this thing here. It amazes me. And I don't know if they're intentionally misleading and distracting us away from the bigger picture, which is that all these people are probably going to be prosecuted. Or if they're just ignorant, they don't know it. I don't know. I can't figure out if they're just ignorant and they actually don't know what's going on. The article goes on to build a case that, and the substance of this article is, there's all this innuendo and there's all these unnamed sources that know that this investigation is moving toward nailing Trump for obstructing justice because he fired Comey because Comey was going to take Trump down. Even though Comey has said 3 times, and I remember, Trump was never under investigation by the FBI. And so what obstruction of justice? If the president wasn't under investigation and he fired the FBI director, then how do you say he obstructed justice? Well, because he interfered in investigation. There was no investigation. He wasn't under investigation. What was under investigation was not the president. Mueller's investigation is not an investigation of the president. I don't know how many times you can say this, but that investigation that Mueller is doing is an election investigation. It is an investigation that is looking into whether or not Russia interfered with the election. It is not a Trump investigation. It is looking at whether on Hillary's side or Trump's side somebody interfered with the investigation. And it could be on either side. Now, I will say this. This is something that if you are of the opinion that Mueller is a black hat and Mueller is representing the interests of the deep state, then you are likely to believe that this investigation is trying to nail Trump and that they will eventually charge him with obstruction of justice. That's kind of the path that you're going down. If you think Mueller's a black hat, then eventually he's going to want to charge Trump with something, like probably obstruction. If you believe that Mueller is either neutral or Mueller is a white hat, then you're likely to believe that the people who are actually more guilty are of the Obama administration, because they were illegally unmasking. They probably used illegal evidence as a basis for the FISA warrant. This is interesting to me. If this report that NBC has is true, and if these people who are reporting this information are actually on Mueller's team, and they're actually correct about the fact that Mueller is looking into that 18-day window of what happened when Flynn was sworn in, and what happened when Flynn had his conversation with Kislyak, and then what all happened before he was fired. If Mueller is looking into that time frame, it's possible that he is actually looking to find out what was going on with Obama's National Security Council. What were Susan Rice and Ben Rhodes and Clapper and Brennan doing? Who had they unmasked? What information had they shared with the press? See, there's two ways this could go. Mueller could be investigating Obama's National Security Council and his staff, or Mueller could be investigating Trump and Flynn and his staff. We don't know. We don't know. So there's two possible ways this could go. If this information is correct, if that is what Mueller's team is focusing on, he could either be looking at nailing some people in the Obama administration, or he could be looking at nailing Trump. We don't know at this point, do we? But you have these unnamed sources who are giving this information. They think they know what Mueller's team is doing. I think it's going to be very interesting to see where this all goes. I don't know where it's going to go. There are going to be some people that are going to take a fall. I'll say that. If Mueller closes up his investigation and doesn't charge Trump and doesn't charge any Obama administration, he just closes up and he's done, I suspect that Chris Wray and Sessions will go after the other people, and they'll sort it all out, and there'll be a bunch of people indicted, more than likely. It's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. And the thing is, it's going to be very difficult to charge the president with obstruction. Alan Dershowitz and Andrew McCarthy and some very sound legal minds have said it is going to be almost impossible to prosecute the president or charge him with obstruction because, first of all, it's perfectly within his rights as president to fire anybody that he wants to that is on the executive branch side of things, and that's DOJ and FBI, right? He can fire FBI director, he can fire the attorney general for no reason at all. And the case for obstruction is really weak. No one that I know who has a legal expertise is taking that seriously. So, yeah, waste of time and money. Probably true. Probably true. Alrighty. No more questions? I'm going to head out. I'll keep doing my research. Oh, by the way, if you like this broadcast, look, I'm not begging for money, okay? I'm an author and I sell my books, and if you want to bless me and support me and you want to buy one of my books, that'd be great. Somebody actually made a significant donation yesterday to my ministry. Denise and I have like a ministry, and then we have a business, and somebody made a very nice donation thanking me for doing these political updates and these videos. And if you feel like, you want to contribute to support what we're doing financially, that gives me the ability to have more time to work on news and politics and current events. Otherwise, I have to spend my time writing books. So I'm not going to call out the person who gave us the donation, but I do thank you for that. And we do have a PayPal account. I'm thinking maybe I should set up a Patreon account. I don't know. if you go to thefreedomnewsproject.com, that is my news website, or you can go to prayingmedic.com, that is my ministry page. There's a PayPal donate button on both of those. Okay, so I'm going to let you go. Love you guys. You're awesome. Take care. I will catch you on the next broadcast.